What's up, old Uncle Two? Back with you once again. All right. So, is the momentum cracking? Let's take a look at it. I'm trying to keep this one short, famous last words, but I think we really will keep it pretty short this week. There's one central theme. I think the momentum is cracking. I think we're due a little bit of a flush. And then I believe we might have a potential for some real opportunity. Let's get into it. We're actually going to start with looking at Bitcoin. We're going to start with the ES this week. Last week or 2 weeks or so, I've been saying a consolidation above this support, which was previously resistance that we slid right through, would be a bullish signal. Well, we have continued to consolidate above it, which is overall bullish. However, it's the type of consolidation that doesn't feel the nicest. We are grinding marginally higher highs, marginally higher lows to the upside on continued declining volume, with momentum also continuing to decline. So typically when that happens, we quite reliably will have a pullback of some sort. The context of that pullback, how far it goes, all those sort of things, not what you're looking to figure out from these characteristics, right? It's just that this shows a specific type of weakness. Often you could see it, for instance, in Elliott Wave terms, in the wave B of a flat, wave X of a sideways, right? Within like an expanded triangle, something like that. So I think no different, honestly, here than something like a flat, potentially. We did, again, slide right up through this resistance on low volume, which to me is a great signal of exhausted sellers. Therefore, price easily rises up. And this is why we have Wyckoff sort of drawn on the chart marginally. Not completely, right? Okay, so what we're going to look, and nothing changes from our initial interpretation of consolidation above support is bullish. We break below, bearish, right? But I think that we've not even really come back to test this support at any point during this grind up. So what I'd like to see is just to come back down, test this supply, find that it does exist, and then we can go up. How deep does it get? This market likes to get a little scared. Not sure. Maybe even breaks temporarily below what would have been support. As long as it snaps right back above, I wouldn't be too disturbed about it. And this is sort of this idea will sort of steer my hand for potential in the weekly outlook for what we're going to look in charts. All right. So I'm thinking it could do that. Now, I want to also stipulate, stop me if you've heard me say this before, on this particular type of setup where divergence could fail. And if divergence fails, it fails gloriously, meaning it just zips right up out of there, right? So not expecting that. Never do I expect that, because it happens so rarely that you never want to anticipate it before it happens, but you never want to discount it either. And in the scheme of things, when they could happen, yeah, this could be a time that it would, but typically not really. Usually you would see that sort of in a different contextual spot, but it could. It's definitely in the running. However, we will say with a higher strength conviction that we think there's a pretty probable chance that we will do something like this, test the supply, find if it exists, and if it does, away we go. Now, quickly to Bitcoin. What does that mean? Well, Bitcoin's doing sort of what we've expected it to do. We've gone up in 3, and then we have now shown weakness yet again. Now, would never rule this chart, never expect this chart to do what you expected to do, if you know what I mean. That's really any chart, but particularly with Bitcoin of late. So it has actually been quite nicely playing out to expectation. We have had this drop off the high. I would say we are currently in a situation of, being able to short for 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe this was even a sideways with a C to the upside. And then you see perfect little rejection right in the right at the 618. You put on the you put on candles, and you'd see it go right into the golden corner pocket, and away we go to the downside potentially. We'll see how this goes, but to me, it looks like a decent area for weakness. Nothing to get too excited about. What I want to get excited about is if the flush in the ES coincides with a flush to the downside outside of this corrective channel on Bitcoin, and then we find this low. And based on the magnitude of this wave off this low, it could be quite nice. You know, this, I have it labeled here where this is a 3 ending here. This could all potentially, you know, again, the internal structure of this we talked about last week isn't the prettiest, but this could all shift to the right. And it could potentially be that this would be the 5th of the C if that were to happen. And I often, you know, not to get too much into the details, but I often like to, especially on longer term swing potentials, get in or get out, or begin to get in or out at wave 3 extremes. Just because on the way, you know, if you're taking profit, sort of make sure you get secured in there. And if you're buying, make sure you don't get left behind. Oftentimes, I've never regretted doing that. I've regretted not doing it though. Okay, so beyond that, if this does break to the downside and flush out, we could then, with all of this momentum recovery in the other direction, see that we could put in that daily divergence that we've been waiting for, or I've been waiting for, to the downside, so that maybe RSI will create a higher low on the breakdown in Bitcoin. Same thing that we'd like to see on any chart, but particularly on this one, a daily divergence would be terrific. Okay, and then just this particular account, you see that I've got a WXY. You know, this could still be labeled as a flat. Just depends on how this plays out, right? So don't even worry about the red labels at this moment. Okay, so flipping over to, let's do Sol real quick. Same thing, sort of as Bitcoin, right? And this is playing out nicely the way that Bitcoin is. And typically when you see that happen, when performance does come underway, you might see a chart like this. You will see it either massively underperform Bitcoin or massively overperform. So if you like to spread out your bets to see if you can get some overperformance, same here as far as what Bitcoin goes, except for this orange impulse is looking like it's playing out a bit better. Still, same sort of philosophy, wave 3s, right? On a bigger term move. All right. We do, of course, want to see a price extreme happen here. So the primary is the primary. That doesn't change. But sure wouldn't mind getting in here. If this were to play out idealistically, get in here and be able to reassess and make some money before you get out of it and get back in down there, right? So just keep that in mind. Let's jump over to the equity chart. Okay, let's just talk about a couple of the Mag 7. We met as one that we've been sort of paying attention to. The last time that I think we talked about it, we were looking for like a 5-ish% rise in a minimum to this level. Oh, maybe it was 15%, right? So when we got to that 15% area, I said that is when we need to reevaluate. A rejection would initiate this plan, and a breakthrough back into this channel would probably initiate this plan. As you saw, we rejected, and then we gapped through the resistance, and now we're sort of consolidating below this gap, which basically we're in pressure to where it could still be either one of those scenarios, and that, with that, say, ES flush to the downside, maybe it just resets, fills this gap, and goes. Or maybe we have to sort of figure out a little bit more to the downside. But I'm sort of expecting that we will be a bit capping out on this, again, momentum divergence. We'll do a reset. This will coincide with the ES down move, and then we will follow through to this plan, because we were not roundly rejected at this resistance, and we have not reached it in a corrective looking move. This feels very impulsive. Corrections feel like opportunity on this chart, and of course the ES too. We talked about Bitcoin, we talked about Sol, and for this week, I don't really want to hit any more. Actually, let's go ahead and just talk quickly about NVIDIA. Okay, so NVIDIA has been under pressure lately, but as you can see, we have a toot pull here, just on, it's a version of extended pull and measured moves. We won't get into the details there, but all kinds of training material on that for you on the website. But what we see here is while we did find nice support at this level, we have moved off of that low, oops, in a bit of a corrective manner. So let's just go down to the 1 hour. Seems like almost like a Bitcoin looking chart, right? As far as the 3-wave move off of the low, this looks a lot like the Bitcoin move off of the low, except for it hasn't had as much weakness. Still floating around the top, flirting with the idea that, hey, I might break to the upside. And that would, if it did do that, that might coincide with that failing gloriously of divergence on the ES, right? Because this is such a big component of that. But in what we might see is that if it were to decline with that ES chart, maybe, just maybe, and this would be, quite the doozy. If we were already putting this next leg in, we have 3-wave move to the upside, right? So this would be your corrective wave, and this would be your final actionary motive wave to the downside. We could be in store for quite the move off of this. And this would be an ending diagonal C if that were the case. A, B, C. And then you would sort of draw it like this. I'm sort of maybe like that. 2 there, 1, 2, 3, ABC, zigzag, zigzag, one more little zigzag right to the MZ, and away we go. That could be quite the buy. A little bit of a capitulation across folks that have probably gone, on our fear and greed indexes. We've gone from extreme fear. We've probably recovered a bit. Easy to throw people back into that, let them think that they're done drowning, and another wave comes and drowns them right before they get to shore, but they freak out. That's where this wave happens, right? Don't freak out. All right, boys. I think that we have our plan for the week. If it fails gloriously, that's cool, because then our bags are bullish. If it doesn't, we'll be in prime position to take advantage of everything in between, from this move down to this move up. All right, boys. Toot out. Till next week.